Welcome to 24 Chambers of Film. I'm Nathan. I want to talk video game movies, more specifically, live action adaptations of video game movies. Hollywood seems to have a love-hate relationship when it comes to making these live action adaptations of video games. They love to make them, and the fans seem to hate them.
Sometimes it may be good, sometimes it may be
I think to better understand where we are now with live action movies, we really have to look at the first four movies that were ever turned into live action from video games. And that is Super Mario Brothers.
Super Mario Brothers. This ain't no game.
Double Dragon.
Double Dragon.
You said it. Street Fighter. And Mortal Kombat. And why these four? Well, because the first three completely fell apart and were not something fans were happy with.
My disappointment is immeasurable.
And the fourth one, Mortal Kombat, actually delivered more of what the fans wanted, and it proved to be a good formula.
Your brother's soul is mine.
Now, was it 100% perfect? No, but they at least did what they had to do to get fans to say, we appreciate what you did. But it was a different time back then, right? They couldn't go back and look at all these failed attempts and then tweak their strategy and make it work like they can nowadays. Back then, these guys were the first ones through the door. They were going to be the ones catching the bullets because no one had done this before. And the very first person through that door were Super Mario Brothers.
Where are we?
I got a feeling we're not in Brooklyn no more.
1993 Super Mario Brothers was released, and it was a catastrophe. But how did we get to the point where it was a catastrophe? They were the first ones to do this. They were basically the guinea pig, because up to that point, no video game had ever been adapted to live action. And not only did they say, hey, we're going to adapt the video game to live action, they said, we're going to adapt the video game, the biggest character, Mario.
They're plumbers.
Perfect.
So this movie essentially got made because Nintendo didn't want to have control over making the movie. What they wanted to do was find a production company and license them and give them creative control of Mario. And they believed that Mario's name was strong enough that it was going to carry the movie. They did not think at any point that someone was going to take their sacred Mario and turn it into something that fans did not like. So in comes in Roland Joff. Who is Roland Joff? Well, he's a two-time Academy Award nominated director. He won the Palme d'Or at Cannes for his film The Mission, which starred Robert De Niro. Sounds pretty promising, right? That guy goes into Nintendo and pitches him his story for Mario. And Nintendo says, you know what, man? That's a good freaking idea. We are going to give you full creative control of Mario. So, with that said, they're on their way. It's time to make the Mario movie.
I don't like where this is going.
He's not making it alone, though. He teamed up with Jake Ebert's production company, Lightmotive. So now Lightmotive is basically the group that is in control of Super Mario. Now, Joff, he wants to make this a funny movie, and they start working on the original version of the script. And to do that, they bring in the writer of The Rain Man, the Academy Award-winning screenplay, The Rain Man. His name is David Amaro. They bring him in to write the first draft of the script. Eventually, Joff goes over to the UK to visit with Rocky Morton and Annabelle Jankel. They're a duo couple that is known for their 3D effects. They've worked on a lot of smaller projects, never done a feature film, but they are considered visionaries. And you would think that a movie like Mario is going to have to be cutting edge. So they've come to agreement that this movie needs to be darker, and they go back and they hire screenwriters Parker Bennett and Terry Runte to write a comedic movie that has these darker tones. They want to be able to mix in the humor with the darker tones. Simultaneously, while Joff is trying to get the screenplay squared away, trying to get the directors on board, he is also trying to cast this movie. So who do they want to bring in to play Mario? Well, Dustin Hoffman originally wanted to play Mario, and they told him no. Then they offered that role to Danny DeVito and told him he could direct the movie. This was obviously before Morton and Jenkel had agreed to direct the movie. He refused it. So we ended up with Bob Hoskins. They started sending Bob Hoskins a script. Eventually, he agreed to do it. I think that was a good casting. Bob Hoskins looks like Mario in the movie. He might be a lot older than Mario's supposed to be in the game. I think Bob Hoskins was about 50 when he played Mario, and in the early games, Mario's supposed to be about 25. But nonetheless, he looks like him. It works. They made it work. When it comes to Luigi is where things start to shift, because Luigi in the movie looks nothing like Luigi in the game. They got John Leguizamo to play Luigi. He's a lot younger than Bob Hoskins. I believe he was about 20 years younger than Bob Hoskins at the time. And that's where they really switched things up. But again, they had this vision. They didn't have the Magic Kingdom that we grew up playing in the video games. They had a different vision for the world. It wasn't even the Magic Mushroom Kingdom. I'm not calling the Magic Kingdom like it's Disneyland. Sorry. The Mushroom Kingdom. They didn't have the same vision for the Mushroom Kingdom. They wanted to make it Dino Land, essentially from Super Mario World. And that's what they did. That's what they were going to go with. So then they casted John Leguizamo. They actually considered Tom Hanks for the role, but I guess he had some box office bombs, and that kind of said, hey, you know what? Let's stay away from Tom Hanks. Little did they know that Tom Hanks would go on to rule the box office while Mario was going to completely crash and burn at the box office.
Stupid is, stupid does, Mrs. Blue.
Then we come to the infamous King Koopa. They wanted Arnold Schwarzenegger, and they wanted Michael Keaton, and both of them said no. And we got Dennis Hopper, to his credit, he didn't do a bad job, in my opinion. He had to work with what he was given, right? And I think he was an entertaining villain. Was that King Koopa? Was that Bowser? No, it was not. So that's your, I guess, core cast, right? Those are like the main guys. You have the heroes, you have the villains. But the damsel in distress needs to be cast. Obviously, we've all known Princess Toadstool, Princess Peach is the damsel in distress, but no. They say, we're not going to do Princess Peach. We're going to do Princess Daisy. So with Princess Daisy as the damsel in distress now, they decide to cast Samantha Mathis, which, well, there's nothing wrong with that casting. What my question is, why Princess Daisy over Princess Peach? Well, there's a few different theories about this. I have one, and I actually read a very interesting one on Reddit. Reddit user Descartes came up with a theory as to why we see Princess Daisy, but it's not really Princess Daisy. Who it is Princess Peach, or at least they think they're putting Princess Peach in there. See, in the early games, she wasn't known as Princess Peach how we all know her nowadays. She was known as Princess Toadstool in the US version. It's always been Princess Peach in Japan, but in the US, it wasn't until 1993 that we actually got to see Princess Peach. So they're not going to call her Princess Toadstool. How ridiculous would that sound, right? We decided to make a movie about this Mushroom Kingdom and these reptiles that are ruling that world. But it's too ridiculous to call her Princess Toadstool. When I saw that movie as a kid, I actually, first thing in my mind was, where's Princess Toadstool? That's what I said. But you know what? I think it makes sense, right? You can't call her Princess Toadstool, so what are you going to call her? Well, at the time, they had released Super Mario Land for the Game Boy, and that was Princess Daisy's first appearance in the video game franchise. So what Descartes trying to say is that they confused Princess Daisy as being the first name of Princess Toadstool and decided to name her Princess Daisy because of that. You know, because there's no phones back then. No one can just ring up Nintendo and be like, hey, does Princess Toadstool have a first name? I mean, would have been much easier, right? Would have just made a lot more sense, but, you know. Well, that's a good theory. That's an interesting theory. I also think that they might have purposely put in Princess Daisy as Daisy because when they made the movie, they didn't want to make Mario the guy that has a relationship with the princess because possibly the age and the casting. So they decided to say, we're going to make Luigi and Princess Daisy be a couple or be the love interest in this movie. How weird would it have been if you had Bob Hoskins trying to pick up on Princess Daisy, right?
No woman can resist the charm of a mouse.
So it could have been intentionally done because of that, and they knew exactly what they were doing, and they're like, we're going to leave Peach out of this, because if you remember, at the end of this movie, they set it up for a sequel. So although even then, when you think about it, Mario had a girlfriend, so unless he was planning to leave her when he runs into actual Princess Peach later on, you know, what was their intent with that? So maybe Descartes is right, and they ended up just thinking they were putting Princess Peach in there, and they actually ended up putting a character of a different name. But nonetheless, let's move on to this. So the film is cast. Everything's going to start shooting in May of 1992 in Wilmington, North Carolina. Seems everything's going like it's supposed to be going. They feel they're happy with their script now, even though it's not the Mario that we're expecting. It's this darker Mario. Then Disney gets involved. God damn it, Disney. No, I'm just joking. Disney actually probably kept this from being something completely unrecognizable, even though it was pretty unrecognizable now. They probably kept it from being even more unrecognizable. Because when Disney got purchase distribution about 6 weeks or so, 4 weeks before the filming actually started, they said, whoa, we don't like this script. It needs to be more family friendly. Makes me wonder what the hell they had in there that wasn't family friendly. According to John Leguizamo, they actually had scenes where there was strippers and stuff like that, which I think is kind of hilarious. Imagine you go to the movie theater and you see strippers in a Mario movie. That would have been wild. So because of this, Joff has to now pivot, and they end up bringing in 2 new writers to rewrite the script to make it more family friendly. So this happens, but Martin and Jenko, who are directing, don't know about it. The actors don't know about it. The sets are being built to match this previous version of the script, and then everyone shows up to North Carolina and they're like, boom, here's a new script. People were pissed. Martin and Jenko were like, you know what? We're not going to direct the movie. They actually ended up directing the movie, even though there was rumors that they didn't finish the movie. They ended up directing it. The actors were not happy, and that probably led to more frustration on the set. There's stories about how bad this experience was for most of the actors. Bob Hoskins has said it was the worst experience of his entire career. He never had a worse experience making a movie. Dennis Hopper has gone on record as calling Morton and Jenko idiots who didn't know what they were doing. Like, he's actually pretty savage with them when it comes to his thoughts on them directing this movie. And then even Morton and Jenko had issues because when the movie needed to be edited, they were initially locked out of the editing room and were not allowed in until they got the Directors Guild of America to step in on their behalf, because they wanted to edit the movie digitally and the studio didn't want to edit it. They wanted to edit it a more old school way. So it was a nightmare for everyone involved, apparently. I mean, a crazy story that came out of that was from Bob Hoskins, who said that he got stabbed 4 times, electrocuted, broke a finger, and nearly drowned while making the movie. That's pretty wild. Also, one thing that's very interesting to me is that they cast Bob Hoskins to play Mario, and apparently Bob Hoskins didn't even freaking know who Mario was. He didn't know it was based on a video game or anything.
I didn't even know it was a game. It was my kids that told me. Well, I said, what's your next film? I'm doing Super Mario Brothers. Oh, that's the game. Oh, what? Yeah, and this is you. And I saw this thing jumping up and down. I thought, I used to play King Lear.
Pretty funny when you actually hear it. Not funny when you see the end product, right? Or at least it wasn't funny to a lot of fans. You know, and before we continue, let me just say, as a kid, I enjoyed the Mario movie. I was a kid. I just thought it was cool to see the video game that I play turn into live action. So I wasn't as critical as a lot of people were as a kid. But I can understand why people didn't like it. When you go back and look at it, I completely understand the criticism it received. I personally still enjoy the movie. I think it's a good time. I think as long as you can detach yourself from what you expect Mario to be, I think you can enjoy it. I look at it as a piece of nostalgia from my childhood that I found entertaining. And so I probably hold it dearer to my heart than most people do, or than someone who's watching it brand new and doesn't have any background with the Mario games or anything like that would, right? But at the minimum, you got to give them credit for being at the forefront of those effects.
Where are we? It's incredible!
Didn't matter that their story wasn't that great, where they're trying to change the look and the feel of what the Mushroom Kingdom or Dino Land from Super Mario World is. So the movie gets released in 1993, in May of 1993, May 28th to be exact, of 1993. And it gets destroyed by the critics, destroyed by the fans. Most people don't like it. It bombs at the box office. It cost them $48 million to make. They made like $20 million in the US, and eventually were able to recoup a little bit more internationally to get around like 38, 39 million. But it lost money. I'm curious if they thought it was going to lose money, or if they the whole time thought they were going to get a sequel, because at the end of that movie, it's set up for a sequel. And clearly that didn't happen. So what went wrong with this? You know, clearly the production was not ideal. They had issues with things, but that doesn't mean that you can't have a good movie. And where I think this took a turn for the worse, or took the U-turn or the wrong turn, whatever phrase you want to use, was when they decided to say, we're not going to stick to the source, in the sense that we are not going to give you the bright, colorful game that, you know, we're going to make it darker, more dystopian. I think that was the biggest mistake right there. It seemed to me that what they were worried about was not being able to appeal to a wider audience. So it seemed like their counter was like, we got to make this seem as realistic as possible. This Mushroom Kingdom, this Dino Land, whatever you look, let's just call it Mushroom Kingdom, Dino Land. They're pretty similar, okay? We are going to turn this this is not going to appeal to anyone who doesn't like the game. We have to make it appeal to more people who are not familiar with the game. Why would that matter? Well, because back then, it's not like today where you have adults streaming video games and all that stuff. Back then, video games really were more for teenagers and kids. And if you were an adult and played video games, you probably were considered a slack. So they were trying to appeal to a more mainstream audience. And they didn't think that having these elements in there likely would attract that more mainstream audience. So they said, let's make it darker. But the problem with doing that is if you look at the movie, you're no longer seeing Mario. Yeah, you have a character of Mario in there, but the game is also the environment. And they removed the environment that was recognizable from there. If you look at that original trailer, yes, they appear in their outfit that's red and green. They appear in that. And if it wasn't for that, and it wasn't for them saying it was Super Mario, you wouldn't know that was a Super Mario Brothers movie. It did not feel like that. So with that issue at hand, I think a lot of people just were like, this is not what I was expecting, and I don't like it. You took too many liberties with the story. And not even with the story, with the environment. I think the story actually was okay. And I could even accept the Princess Daisy thing. I could accept a younger Luigi, an older Mario, all of that. Very acceptable. But when you get into the Mushroom Kingdom, you basically go from Manhattan to Dino-Hattan or Brooklyn to Dino-Hattan, whatever you want to call it. And it just looks like a run-down, crappy place to be, and almost like, what are you worth? Why are you fighting for it, right? So that was their biggest pitfall. The fact that they didn't want to stick to the source. And here's the thing. I think they could have stuck to the source and been successful. Because remember, in 1990, Ninja Turtles came out. Ninja Turtles had a freaking life-size rat teaching life-size turtles that moved and talked like humans ninja shit. Awesome! Right? And people accepted it. That movie did phenomenal at the box office. So why couldn't the same thing happen for a video game? It just seemed they were scared of taking that gamble. They were the first ones in the door, and they were like, shit, we're gonna get shot at, and we want to try to avoid as many strays or many bullets as possible. And they wanted to play it. They thought what they were doing was playing it safe. They thought changing like that was going to make it more appealing, probably increases chances at box office success, which I think it could work at times. See, to me, one of the best examples of that is when they did the X-Men movie. They didn't bring him in with the cartoon comic book costumes. They kept him more realistic and things like that, but they were based in reality in the sense that they weren't in a fictional kingdom. And to me, the fictional kingdom is such a big part of the Mario universe that you can't just remove that and then expect people to say this is the same thing. So that was their mistake right there. I think everything else, the Goombas not looking like Goombas, that was important, but it just didn't feel like Mario when you're watching it. All of that is secondary to the main thing, that they took it away from its roots. They took it away from the Mushroom Kingdom and made it this uninhabitable place. And another small side note, they made Koopa a dinosaur. They made them reptiles, dinosaurs specifically. And yes, Koopa's a reptile, but he's not a dinosaur. He's a freaking turtle. And for the longest time, because of this movie, I thought Koopa was a dinosaur. I really did, until I one day was like, I don't know, I started thinking about it, and I was like, but he's got a shell. I just forgot that he had a shell. But I was looking at, I think I was playing like Super Mario Brothers 3, where you have to beat all of the different ships, beat his kids in all the different ships. And I was like, they all have shells. What the hell? I thought they were dinosaurs. This movie freaking made me believe that Cooper was a dinosaur. So, as a kid, I just was like, oh, they're good. They're doing what's right. And it's just funny now that I think about it. But nonetheless, Mario went in, tried to do something that wasn't done before, and they stumbled out of the gate. And the reason I say they stumbled is because, like I said, I enjoy this movie. I like this movie, but I acknowledge that it was not what people wanted to see. It was not what people saw or envisioned as their Mario movie. So they stumbled, they fumbled, they lost at the box office, and it took freaking 30 years for another Mario movie to be released. And when they did the second time around, they said, no way, we're not doing live action. We're going animated CGI, and that thing was a home run.
All right, let's go.
Wahoo! $1 billion at the box office internationally. They knew that recreating the Mushroom Kingdom in a movie is going to be a tall task. And rather than mess with it, obviously they couldn't do that movie back then because of special effects. They weren't around. The best they could do was probably a fully animated cartoon looking movie. So they didn't have their option was to go live action, and it was just too soon for them to try to do that. I mean, they had to try it though, right? Because we had to know it wasn't going to work. But it's not like creating, Lord of the Rings where the sets, although not real, look somewhat realistic. Everything in the Mushroom Kingdom doesn't look real at all. So it had to be done. And the only way you could pull off the Mushroom Kingdom successfully is with animation and CGI. So it's just doesn't make any sense to go back. So at the end of the day, you got to give them credit for trying to make the movie that they tried to make. They just took aim and they missed. Nothing wrong with missing. What sucks is that it took a long time to get a new Mario movie. And it really, I think, killed any possibility of us getting another live action Mario movie. I like seeing live action movies of this stuff. I like to see how they do it. That's why I love Ninja Turtles, 1990 especially. I like Secret of the Ooze. Hate the third one, but Secret of the Ooze is okay. But 1991 to me is the best. I hated the new Ninja Turtles that Michael Bay did. I thought that shit was garbage. It was the 1990s Ninja Turtles is the perfect example of you take something that's comic book and you make it live action. That was executed to me flawlessly. So with that said, why is it that fans seem to hate these live action adaptations? Well, I think it comes down to just Hollywood, the studios, not really giving the fans what they want. They seem to think that they have to do it a certain way to appeal to a certain audience or recoup their money at the box office. And that doesn't seem to necessarily be the case because they do this over and over and then they flop over and over. A lot of times listening to the fans is what gets you the success because the fans are your core audience, right? That video game is worthy of being turned into a live action movie because the fans propelled that video game franchise to notoriety. One of the best examples of this is when Sonic was turned into a live action movie. They released the first trailer and people hated what Sonic looked like.
Meow? A few moments later. I have no idea! Oh, this one is cute. Let's keep him.
The studio actually listened. They went back, they retweaked Sonic, and they had a huge franchise now. There's been 2 movies, a TV series, a 3rd movie on the way, but because they listened to the fans. If they would have just stuck to the Sonic that came out in the first version, fans would have shredded it apart when it went to the box office. No one would have been able to get past the fact that Sonic didn't look like what fans expected him to look like. But that's just one small example of a studio listening to what the fans want. The majority of the time, they just say, screw that, we're going to give you what you want. And then it's a train wreck after that. So make sure you subscribe to the channel. Make sure you like this video. We'd appreciate it a lot. And if you subscribe to the channel, you're going to know when the Double Dragon video drops. So just to recap, first video you just finished watching, congratulations if you've made it this far. Hooray, can we add some balloons, some fireworks here? Was on the Super Mario Brothers movie. It was the first ever live action movie that was based on a video game. The second video is going to be Double Dragon.
Double Dragon.
You said it. The third one is going to be Street Fighter. Fourth one is going to be Mortal Kombat. So thank you very much for watching. I'm Nathan. This is 24 Chambers of Film.